Hello, I'm Reggie Grotewell with Peachtree Woodworking Supply, and I'm excited to have you in my shop. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a variety of moldings which will save you money, allows you to have more choices of profiles, and can make great gifts. With only a handful of bits, you'll be able to create thousands of custom moldings which can range from 3/4 of an inch wide to any width you want. I will show you how to set up your router bits and machine several types of moldings. We will start with base molding, move on to crown molding, and add in several easy projects to finish with. Let's get started. Base moldings can be used not only in our home but also on a lot of our woodworking projects. Bookcases, end tables, and entertainment centers are just a few examples of projects that can be improved by adding a nice base molding that a woodworker of any level can make. You can use any one of these 3 face molding bits depending on your preference. Today, we'll be using the first molding bit to cut 3 different profiles. Let's start with an easy cut. Lower the bit until it lines up right about here. Now don't worry about this height setup, it just has to be close. If the bit is a little higher or a little lower than I have set up here, you will still create nice molding. It will just look a little different. Line up your fence with the bearing. Now I've set my router speed to 16,000 RPM. We can start making our first cut. Never forget to wear your safety glasses and hearing protection. Now that we have our molding complete, we can put our miter cuts on here and attach it right to our project. Creating crown molding on the router table is easy. Start by trying this simple profile. Make the first cut with your molding bit at a low setting, kind of like we've done here. Now let's chuck up our next router bit and make our final profile cut for this molding. Our cove and bead is a unique bit. It doesn't have a bearing, so we can place this profile anywhere on our material that we like. But first, let's set up our height. We want to lower this so the top of this last bead is even with the top of the router table. Then we can place our fence so that it'll cut this profile in the center of our board. We still want to run at about 16,000 RPM. Now that we've made our crown molding, we want to place a spring angle on the back side that'll make this set at a 45-degree angle. Now a real easy way to do this is to use your chamfer bit on your router table. And what we'll do on this profile is we're going to make a cut along both of the back sides of our molding and then one cut on the top side of our molding on the front. This last cut is going to be a nice light cut. Now that we've created our crown molding, it's ready for the miter cut. I've already cut my base molding to size and ready to cut the crown. Flip your crown upside down and place the spring angle that you made with your chamfer bit against the fence of your saw and the other against the bed. Turn your saw to 45 degrees and make your cuts. Now that we have made an outside corner, we can attach it to an end table, entertainment center, kitchen cabinets, or a variety of other projects. One of my favorite projects is to use crown molding to create decorative shelves like this one. Cut pieces to fit on the bottom and back. Glue them together to create a bracket. Then drill a couple holes or keyholes to hang the shelf. Attach the molding to the bracket. Just cap the top and you have a great little shelf. As you can see, building your own molding can be simple, fun, and will take your furniture making to the next level. Picture frames can be fast, easy, and inexpensive gifts that are cherished for a lifetime. Frames can be made as skinny as 3/4 of an inch up to 5 to 6 inches wide. However, most of your small to medium-sized picture frames are about 2.5 inches. A picture frame is simply a piece of molding with mitered corners with a rabbet cut on the backside to give you a nice place to attach your glass, matting, picture, and backing. Let's make an 8x10 picture frame using 2.5-inch stock. Our first cut will be with our second face molding bit. Raise the router bit to this height. As you can see, you could use this as base molding. However, we want to turn this into a picture frame. Let's use our cove and bead as an edging bit here. The height of the router bit will depend on the profile that you prefer. I recommend that you play with several setups until you find a profile that suits your taste. You can also move the fence to create different profiles. Today, we will set our fence to the maximum depth, which is just inside of the center of the router bit. If you want to make a wider cut, you will need to make multiple passes. Just remember, always move the fence away from the router bit when making more than one pass. We cut the board flat on the table with the outside of our picture frame against the fence. We could stop here and this would make a fine picture frame. However, if you make a second pass with a wood upright along the fence, you can create interesting edges that cannot be duplicated by any other set of router bits. Now that you have the profile that you want, make the rabbet on the inside edge of the frame. The rabbet can be anywhere from 3/8 to 3/4 of an inch wide. Our picture frame moldings are completed. Let's go to the table saw and make our miter cut. The easiest way to make an accurate miter cut for picture frames is with a miter sled that has both a left and a right hand sled. You can also use a miter gauge or a miter saw. Regardless of which method you choose, take the time to tune up your saw so that the miter cuts will line up perfect. Many people will judge the quality of the frame by the corners. So take the time and make something you can be truly proud of. Now when we glue this joint, you're basically gluing end grain together, so there's not a lot of strength. There are several ways to reinforce your joint. My two favorite ways are the corner spline and biscuits. Let's go back to our router table and use both techniques on a couple of frames. Biscuits are used in many applications in our shop. They are strong, hidden, and even help us line up pieces during glue up. Biscuit joiners can be awkward to use on picture frames, so I prefer to use a 5/32 slot cutter on my router table. Set the bit height so that it's just below center of your stock. You will need to make this simple 45-degree plywood jig to make the cut in a safe manner. I'm using stop blocks so I can achieve the proper width of the cut. Make a couple of test cuts to find this width. Drop a biscuit in the slot and make sure it sets in at least halfway. Line up your fence with the bearing and run this router bit at 16,000 RPM. Hold the jig against the fence and the rear stop block. Slowly allow the router bit to plunge into the wood until it touches the fence. Move to the forward stop block and back. Pull the stock out and cut this on all four corners. Flip the jig over to make the slot on the other end of your piece. Now don't forget to make a test cut because you'll probably need to make adjustments to your stop blocks. Just make sure that the router bit will not cut into the profile that you created earlier. Hold the wood tight as you make this plunge cut. The router bit is pulling the wood towards the fence. There are several ways within everyone's budget to clamp your picture frame together. Whichever method you choose, try to glue up all four corners at once. If you are off just by 1/1000th of an inch on each cut, it multiplies by 8 and it shows on the last joint you glue up. It is much easier to hide the couple thousandths on each joint. Apply glue to all the miter cuts and the biscuits. The biscuit will swell slightly as it absorbs some of the glue. This will make a nice, tight fit that is super strong. While we let the glue dry, let's add a spline to this picture frame corner that I glued up without a biscuit. Use the same setup, just without the stop blocks. This will cut a slot into the corners of your frame. Our spline is a piece of hardwood that we glue into that slot. Once it dries, you can trim that off. And you can use the same species of wood to hide the joint, or use a contrasting color to really make it stand out. Now that you know the basics of picture framing, you'll be able to make frames of any size. Add some creativity and a little practice, and you'll have this mastered in no time at all. The best thing about making your own molding is you can use your scraps to make fast, easy projects like this jewelry box. When you machine your moldings, always make extra so that if you make any mistakes, you have backup pieces. Instead of throwing away the leftovers, save them and use them on this quick project. Start by cutting a dado in the back side of the molding, which will hold the bottom of your box. Start with one corner and apply glue to the end of both miter cuts. Use a spring clamp to hold the two pieces together. Do the same thing to the next corner. Insert the bottom into the slot. Glue and clamp the last end piece into place. Measure your opening and create a lid that is a ½ inch wider and longer. Put a profile on the outside edge using the cove and bead bit. By placing a rabbet cut on the bottom of the lid, it will recess slightly into the box, giving the top a sleeker appearance. Add a hinge and you have one of the nicest projects you've ever made out of scrap wood. I've enjoyed having you in my shop and hope you have a better understanding of what you can accomplish with just a handful of molding router bits. Make sure you watch our bonus section for more tips on tools and safety. With these tips and a little practice, you'll be able to make hundreds of moldings for a wide range of projects. Just remember, the only way to become a better woodworker is to get in your shop and be a woodworker. I'm Reggie Grotewell, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for checking out our bonus section. I wanted the opportunity to talk a little about safety and some of the tools that I use in my shop. First and foremost, always use eye and ear protection. Now, in order for the camera to catch some of the cuts I was making, I did not use featherboards in this video. Featherboards not only make cutting molding safer, they also give us more control over our material, especially when working with longer stock. If I were cutting crown molding for a set of kitchen cabinets, I'd be working with long pieces, and featherboards would keep my material tight to the table and against the fence. This would ensure a nice, clean, consistent cut. Plus, it keeps my hands at a very safe distance from the router bit. If you don't feel comfortable making any of the cuts I demonstrated today, do not try them yourself. Always plan your cuts so they are safe, and then cut with confidence. One of the tools that has improved my shop safety and confidence the most is the gripper. It is one safety device that will make you a better woodworker. Now, the router table system that I'm using is the Peachtree Deluxe router table with a Freud router. This setup allows me to quickly change out my bits from above the table. This has saved me countless hours of setup time in my shop. And finally, my miter sled is the Dubby. It is one of those tools where simple is better. If you want to pick up any of the products that I've used today, go to www.petreeusa.com. Thanks again for joining me, and happy woodworking.